Hey guys, this is Eric's What If, and welcome back to part 4 of What If Yuji was like Goro. Continuing where we left off, Yuji knew that he had to get stronger than he's ever gotten before. The last curse that he fought had almost killed him, and he wasn't going to take that kind of chance again. He wanted to get as strong as he possibly could. He'd asked Sukuna if he could train him even harder than he had already been doing, and to hold nothing back with him. Sukuna, enjoying the greed that Yuji was currently showing, would gladly accept. He would tell Yuji that during that fight with the cursed spirit, he noticed something inside of his body. When Yuji absorbed those 3 other special grade objects, a change was starting to happen inside of his body. Sukuna would tell Yuji that whatever those objects were, those are also kind of like his fingers, meaning that he absorbed the cursed energy that was inside of the objects, and in doing so, he might be able to use the curse technique that the curse itself was using. Yuji would think it was pretty cool, seeing that he was probably going to be able to manipulate blood. However, he wasn't going to know how to use it. Sukuna would tell Yuji that he felt a change inside of him once he consumed them, and that even if he wasn't able to use the techniques now, eventually, if he consumed more of those, a technique was sure to come. Yuji would resolve himself and understand what he needs to do. He would train himself and still his reserve over and over. He had already beaten 2 special grade curse spirits, and they were pretty strong as well. The only direction he could go was up from now on, and that was exactly what he was going to do. Elsewhere, Kinjaku would have been planning with the other cursed spirits on how they were going to be able to get Yuji to eat the fingers. Right now, currently, they had 10 of Sukuna's fingers, while knowing that Yuji on his own had consumed 5 fingers. They needed to make a situation to where they could get Yuji alone, where he was on the brink of death, so they could feed him all 10 of the fingers at once, so Sukuna could take control, even if momentarily. Kinjaku would tell Mahito that he would require him to do the job. Mahito would smile because he wanted his revenge against Yuji from the first time they fought. Kinjaku would also tell Mahito that he would send one of the curses that he's made in order to help Mahito. Unlike the last cursed beast that Kinjaku had made, this one was a lot more intelligent than the last one that Kinjaku had made. Although it wasn't able to speak, it could still understand commands, and it was even stronger than the last one Kinjaku made. He would tell Mahito that it was going to be his job to get Sukuna to wake up. He would just need his help for a little bit before they went with the plan. They would capture Satoru Gojo first, and then go after Yuji. He would tell Mahito and the other curses that they would go through with their plan on October 31st. They would fold a 400-meter curtain over Shibuya and trap the people inside until Gojo Satoru arrives. And Yuji, seeing the curtain, would certainly come over to see what was going on. It's in his nature, Kinjaku would tell the curses. So a few weeks would go by, with Kinjaku and the curses getting their plan 100% together, while Yuji would be training non-stop to get only stronger. As October 31st would come around, the veil over Shibuya would drop. It would be noticed by the Jujutsu High School, as well as Yuji Itadori. Yuji would wonder why such a large barrier was formed, and that there had to be something sickly going inside of there. Yuji would then ask Sukuna what he thinks of this. Sukuna, not wanting to spoil the fun, would tell Yuji that he believes this is an opportunity for him to get stronger, and that he should simply just go inside and stop wasting time. He knows that he wants to, so why is he sitting around idly? Yuji would chuckle and walk into the barrier. This is when Yuji would realize that the Jujutsu sorcerers were also here. He would kiss his teeth, wondering exactly what was going on. It'd make perfectly sense for the Jujutsu sorcerers to come if there was a veil thrown over a city. But Yuji knew there was something bigger in play here. He just couldn't understand what it was. Nothing like this just happens for no reason. So instead of immediately going in fist first, he was going to look around and see what he could figure out before he did anything. As Yuji would be searching about, he would come across a Jujutsu sorcerer and a grasshopper-looking curse. The sorcerer would have been able to easily take out the curse. However, just as the curse would be eliminated, she would turn around and tell Yuji that she could see him. Yuji would be shocked, seeing as he thought he was hiding himself pretty well. She would then ask Yuji, what exactly is he doing here? She knows who he is, and knows that he has an execution order on his head. Was he sure it was safe for him to be walking around like this, especially when Jujutsu sorcerers were about? Yuji would tell her that she didn't need to worry, and that the only person that he probably wasn't able to kill was Gojo Satoru. The lady would look over and introduce herself, saying that her name was Mei Mei. She would tell Yuji that she doesn't really care how the higher-ups operate. As long as Yuji doesn't cause any trouble for her, she won't get in the way of whatever he's doing. Yuji would ask her if she could give him information about what was going on here, but she would tell him that information comes with a price. Yuji would kiss his teeth. He would tell her to just forget it, and now he'll figure things out on his own. She would then ask Yuji if he was out to stop Jujutsu sorcerers, or was he trying to help them. Yuji would say that it was neither, and he was doing things his own way. And as long as no Jujutsu sorcerers got in his way, he wouldn't get in theirs. His only goal was to get stronger, and that's all he cared about. Mei Mei would laugh and tell Yuji that if he really wants to get stronger, there is some information that she can give out for free for him. There are currently a lot of special grade cursed spirits that are around, and that if he wants to get stronger, this might be the perfect chance for him. She would only point him in the direction of where the cursed spirits were, but wouldn't give him any more information than that. Yuji would nod his head and thank Mei Mei. She would then tell him that he shouldn't thank her yet, because she still has to report that she's seen him in Shibuya. Yuji would stare at her and say, "I'm guessing that's the cost." She would shrug her shoulders and begin to walk off, telling Yuji that someone has high hopes for him. Yuji would say yeah, whatever, and begin walking towards the direction that she pointed. While the situation with Kinjaku and Gojo would go exactly the same, with Gojo killing one of the special grade curses that Kinjaku had sent out. With cursed spirit manipulation, he would then be bombarded with 1,000 transfigured humans, tiring himself out, with this leading to his capture with the prison realm. Kinjaku would then tell Mahito that it's time to move to the different plan. Now that Satoru Gojo had been captured, they would now force feed Yuji all 10 of the fingers. Kinjaku knew that Yuji was here. He knew that he wouldn't give up an opportunity like this, so he would tell Mahito, along with the other cursed spirit, to go along and find Yuji so they could find him, bring him to death's door, and force feed him all 10 of the fingers. And when Sukuna awakens, they would tell Sukuna about the plan and try to get him to make a pact with Yuji so that in the end, it was guaranteed that everything would work out. Mahito would ask Kinjaku, was the cursed spirit really necessary in order to take down Yuji? Kinjaku would tell Mahito that Yuji was able to take down Jogo, and he doubts Yuji has been sitting idly by, waiting for more cursed spirits to simply come to him. He would tell Mahito to not look down on Yuji, and that he was extremely strong. Kinjaku himself wasn't sure if he'd be able to beat Yuji one-on-one. He's sure he could do it, but there wasn't a 100% chance for him to win, so he wasn't going to take his chances. Mahito would tell the other cursed spirit to hurry up and follow behind him, and when they get into the fight with Itadori, to not slow him down. The cursed spirit would tell Mahito to not worry about him, and that he needs to handle his own weight. Mahito would laugh, telling the other spirit that he has guts, and that they need to hurry up. Yuji would be walking around, taking out transfigured humans as he sees, making sure he didn't get in the way of any Jujutsu sorcerers, because he didn't want to hassle with them. He was simply there to get stronger. He didn't care about anybody else. As Yuji would be traversing through the area, he would see a Jujutsu sorcerer fall from the roof. He would have went over to grab him, but it was simply too late. The sorcerer would crash into the ground, dying on impact. Yuji would look up from the building and see another sorcerer falling down. The sorcerer would crash onto the ground, staring at Yuji with seemingly cold eyes. Yuji would stare at the man, but he couldn't sense any cursed energy coming off of him. The man would simply get into a fighting stance and immediately rush at Yuji. Yuji was kinda happy that he was actually able to fight somebody. However, he wasn't sure if this person was from Jujutsu High or not. He didn't want to interact with those people because it would mean trouble for him. But at the moment, he couldn't sit around and figure out if this person was a Jujutsu sorcerer or not. Everything he was about to do was self-defense. The man would flash towards Yuji, sending a left punch straight towards Yuji's face. Yuji would duck underneath it and sweep his legs. However, the man would catch himself, flipping back over. He would then strike Yuji with a kick in his torso, catching him off guard. Yuji would be sent back and smile. It was hard to read what this guy was going to do because he didn't have any cursed energy, so he'd have to fight the old-fashioned way, relying on nothing but his senses. The man would rush in again, throwing a quick combo. Yuji would get hit by the first punch, but then he would catch on. Dodging and countering, he would send a knee towards the man's face, as the man would try to counterattack, sending a punch of his own. But Yuji would grab his arm, twisting around him, charging his fist with cursed energy, and sending a strike directly towards the man. He would hit him directly in the back, sending him flying through a building. Yuji would attempt to follow up on the attack. However, when he got over there, the man was nowhere to be seen. Just then, from above, the man would fall down, kicking Yuji, but Yuji was able to see this, blocking. The man would then use the momentum to flip off of Yuji. Landing on the ground, he would rush back in once again. They would re-engage with hand-to-hand combat, but Yuji was quick to learn. What started off as Yuji getting hit every other engagement was now Yuji completely dominating the man in hand-to-hand combat. Yuji would strike right at the man's face, spinning him around. However, the man would use the momentum and swing, but Yuji would duck underneath it, grabbing the man's arm, pulling him forward and kneeing him in the stomach. The man would attempt to grab Yuji. However, Yuji would duck underneath it again, slipping right through his grasp. Yuji would end up behind the man, throwing in another combo. Yuji would have 100% advantage here, but just then, Yuji from his right could feel the flare of cursed energy. Out of nowhere, a beam of blood would strike straight through Yuji's arm. Yuji would wince in pain, throwing him off. The man Yuji was fighting would capitalize off the moment, striking Yuji with a 3-piece, grabbing his leg and sending him flying through a building. Yuji would be confused as where the blood had came from. It was just like that one cursed spirit he had killed a while ago. But why would another one be here? He knew something was up, he just didn't know what it was. But just out of nowhere, Yuji would hear crashing through the building. As he would look up, he would see Mahito slamming down through the ceiling, getting ready to attack him. Yuji would roll out of the way, just narrowly dodging in time. However, just as he would look up, another beam of blood would be directly in front of him. Yuji would dodge out of the way, but not without getting grazed by the attack. It would leave a mark on his face, with Yuji realizing that things were about to take a turn for the worse. Mahito had felt Yuji's cursed energy from afar and told the other cursed spirit to come with him. He would see that Yuji was getting attacked by somebody already, so they might as well capitalize off on the moment. As Yuji would get up, he would look around himself and see that he was surrounded. One was the man without cursed energy, the other was Mahito, and the third was another cursed spirit that was exactly like the one he had fought before. Sukuna would tell Yuji, "Do you think you can take care of it? If not, lend me your body and I'll do it for you." Yuji would tell Sukuna that if things get worse, he'll let him free roam, but for now, he thinks he can handle it. Yuji would then focus on his arm and begin to heal it up. Mahito and the cursed spirit would be shocked, realizing that Yuji now knows how to use reverse curse technique. He wasn't going to be able to fight with his arm damaged like that, but he didn't want to use it this early due to the amount of cursed energy that it requires. But Yuji would simply smile, saying that everything was going to be alright until all three of them to come. Without hesitation, the man without cursed energy would dash straight towards Yuji, with the blood cursed spirit charging another piercing blood. Mahito would begin to spit out transfigured humans, sending them at Yuji. Yuji would close his eyes and take a deep breath. He would then open them, exhaling, rushing in at the man with no cursed energy. The man would send a left, but Yuji would grab his hand, slamming him into a few transfigured humans, finishing his attack on him with a 3-piece and kicking him in the side of the head, sending him flying towards more transfigured humans. As Yuji would look to his left, he would see a piercing blood coming straight at him. He would slide underneath it and rush straight at the cursed spirit. The cursed spirit would get ready for Yuji to attack. However, Yuji would then get grabbed by the man without cursed energy. Grabbing Yuji's leg, he would pull him backwards, directly into his fist, as Mahito would run over, attempting to strike Yuji as well. Yuji would see Mahito, parrying his attack, making him run into the man without cursed energy. Mahito would strike the man, and Yuji would uppercut Mahito right in the chin, sending him flying upwards. Yuji would then use Dismantle, sending slashes directly at Mahito, cutting him to pieces. He would then turn around quickly, sending a kick directly at the man without cursed energy's face, using Cleave with his feet the second his foot would make contact. It would slash at the man, but it wasn't deep due to the fact that he was using his feet. However, it would still send the man flying. The blood spirit would then rush in at Yuji. The spirit would be using Flowing Red skill, enhancing his strength and durability. He would engage in hand-to-hand combat with Yuji, with Yuji realizing that this one was stronger than the one he had fought a while ago. Even though Yuji was in a very serious moment, he couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. If this one was stronger than the last one he had fought, he wonders what was inside the creature that he would be able to eat to make him stronger as well. He was practically salivating at the mouth. Yuji wanted to kill the blood spirit first, so he could consume whatever was inside that, and then he'll deal with the other two. He would rush in at the blood spirit, initiating with a grab. He would send a niece towards the spirit's stomach. However, he would be met with strong resistance, as this spirit also had armor exactly like the last one. Yuji would kiss his teeth, pushing off of the cursed spirit, sending dismantles down along with it. It would chip away at the armor, however, it wasn't doing major damage. As Yuji would touch the ground, he would see Mahito to his left and the man without cursed energy to his right. He was surrounded and being rushed at all angles. However, the only emotion that Yuji could portray right now was absolute joy. Mahito would strike Yuji in the face. The man without cursed energy would strike Yuji in the body, with the blood spirit also striking Yuji in the body. This would launch Yuji directly into a building, crashing. Yuji knew what this battle was going to entail. He was going to be pushed to his absolute limits, and that was the dumbest possible thing that they could do. But Yuji was doing nothing but enjoying this. As he would get up from the rubble, he would see more blood beams coming directly towards him. He would jump over it, as Mahito would send a soul multiplicity straight towards Yuji, hitting him in the chest, sending him through another building, as the man without cursed energy would follow up, striking Yuji with a combo, hitting him in the face and body. Yuji could do nothing but take the attacks right now, but as the man would send another attack towards Yuji would dodge it, backhanding the man. As he would strike, he would also use cleave, making sure to cut the man as much as he could. The guy without cursed energy was annoying because he couldn't sense him at all, but the other two were easy to read because they had cursed energy. Yuji would tell himself that he might need to change his focus onto the guy without cursed energy, but even if he were to try to do that, the other two would jump in and attempt to attack him. Yuji would be stuck, he didn't know what to do, and he was fighting a losing fight right now. However, before Yuji could do any more thinking, another piercing blood would be sent directly towards him. Yuji would dodge out of the way again. However, directly behind Yuji, Mahito would come in. Mahito would scream about how much he loves being a curse, and that during the entire time in Shibuya, he's been able to do exactly whatever he wants. And the second that they kill Yuji, they'll be able to do even more. Striking Yuji in the back, cracking him with a black flash. Yuji could feel that one a lot. That one hurt more than anything he's ever felt. He'd be sent flying directly into a building. That black flash was lethal for Yuji. He was already taking a lot of damage from this fight, and that attack only doubled the damage he had just received. Yuji wasn't sure if he could take any more, but he wasn't going to give up just like that. The fight wasn't impossible to win, but the odds weren't in Yuji's favor. It was a 3-on-1 with 2 special grades and a man without cursed energy. However, Yuji wasn't going to back down, not even a little bit. Yuji would get up and smack both of his hands on his face. He would tell himself that he needs to get it together. He needs to lock in right now. He was going to win, and that's all that mattered. Yuji would smile and walk out of the rubble. The man with no cursed energy would immediately rush in on Yuji's right. However, Yuji would turn, striking the man in the face, and he would begin a quick assault on the man, hitting him over and over. Mahito would attempt to swing in again, hitting Yuji. But Yuji would dunk underneath his attack, backhanding Mahito, turning back around towards the man with no cursed energy and striking him in the chest, hitting him with a black flash. He would then turn towards Mahito, rushing at him. He would then begin his assault on Mahito. He would come in with a right hook straight to his face, then hitting him with 2 quick left jabs. Knocking him back a little bit, he would grab his arm and pull him back, sending a right elbow towards his jaw. He would grab Mahito again and throw him. As Mahito would be thrown off balance, Yuji would rush back in immediately, hitting Mahito with another combo. It was only a couple strikes by Yuji to Mahito. However, the damage was a lot more than Mahito had expected. Mahito would attempt to strike Yuji, swinging his left arm, but Yuji would simply dodge it, sending a right hook again, cracking Mahito in the face with a black flash. It would send Mahito back, but he would have just barely blocked it in time. Just as Yuji would be about to re-engage with Mahito, he would then feel a pierce directly through his chest. He would then turn around and see that the blood-cursed spirit had used piercing blood to shoot directly through his chest. He had forgotten all about the cursed spirit. He was so locked in on the man without cursed energy and Mahito that it had completely slipped his mind. He would use reverse curse technique, but in him getting pierced by the piercing blood attack, Mahito would have found an opening that he needed. Coming back in at Yuji, he would strike him directly in the face with another black flash. The momentum would send Yuji directly towards the blood-cursed spirit, the blood-cursed spirit using 2 of his arms to stab Yuji directly in the torso, one going through his chest, piercing his lungs, and the other one going through his stomach. Yuji knew that this was probably it for him. He didn't want to give Sukuna control, and he thought he had gotten stronger. But right now, it didn't seem like he had much of a choice. So that's exactly what Yuji would do. The second he would have took all that damage, he would have immediately gave Sukuna control. As the blood spirit would realize something had happened, his arms would immediately fall off, with Sukuna telling the spirit that he should know its place, sending a dismantle directly towards the curse, cleaving it into 5. The curse would be exercised on the spot. Sukuna would walk over and dig inside of the spirit, grabbing all 4 of the special grade objects and consuming them. With Sukuna consuming it himself, he would realize yet again, Yuji's body was reacting violently this time. His body was pretty much like a cursed spirit at this point. If Yuji were to consume even more cursed items like that, it was guaranteed for Yuji to be a cursed spirit inside of a human's body. With not even a second later, the man without cursed energy would rush in at Sukuna, but Sukuna would simply send more dismantles towards him, turning the man into mincemeat, as the last person left would be Mahito. However, Mahito knew better than to attempt to attack Sukuna. He would stare at Sukuna and tell him that he has a deal he wants to make with him. Mahito would tell Sukuna that he has 10 of his fingers currently, and he wants to give them to him. However, in exchange, he has to listen to their plan. He would tell Sukuna that him and Kinjaku have been planning something and want Sukuna to be a part of it. They want him to be able to make a pact with Yuji in order for things to go smoothly. Sukuna would laugh and tell Mahito that it's great that he's found 10 of his fingers. However, he's already made a pact with the boy. He would tell Mahito that he kinda enjoys where he's at right now. The boy's progress was exciting to see. Seeing someone that has the greed that he has is very exciting, and he can't wait to see what the boy could do in the future. But Sukuna would tell Mahito that if he gave him the 10 fingers, Sukuna would humor him. He would do whatever Mahito wanted, just until Yuji was able to gain his body back. That's the deal he was going to make with Mahito. He'll even make a deal right now. After Sukuna was to eat all 10 of his fingers, if Mahito was even able to land an attack on him once, he would kill all the Jujutsu sorcerers and humans that were in Shibuya at the moment. Mahito would agree to the deal, saying that he has full faith in himself, saying that he believes even he'll be able to attack the mighty Sukuna at least once. Mahito would give Sukuna the fingers, as he would wait for Sukuna to eat all 10 of them. As Sukuna would finish eating the fingers, he would tell Mahito that he'd better not chicken out. All he has to do is land one little attack. Mahito would tell Sukuna that he didn't need to worry. He wasn't going to chicken out at all. Mahito would initiate the fight, rushing in at Sukuna, hoping that he could get an early hit in to finish it quickly. But Sukuna would simply point his finger at Mahito, sending dismantles directly towards him. They would slice Mahito up. Mahito would then transform his soul into a mouse to try to dodge the slashes, as many as he could. But Sukuna was only here for a good fight. He would chase Mahito around, sending slashes. Mahito would dodge majority of the slashes, but still be hit by some of them. Mahito was on the verge of awakening his soul, and he could feel it. He just needed to land another one of those black flashes, but he knew he probably wasn't going to be able to land one on Sukuna. As he would run around, he would be searching for Jujutsu sorcerers that he could land a black flash on unknowingly. For right now, he was simply going to dodge Sukuna and not let him get an attack off on him, trying to find an opportunity to where he can awaken properly. Just then, he would see it. There would be some Jujutsu sorcerers and curse users fighting amongst each other. Mahito would take this opportunity, seeing the Jujutsu sorcerers. He would rush in immediately, cracking one of them in the face, landing a black flash. Mahito couldn't realize how lucky he was. He had finally unlocked the true essence of his soul, and he was going to fight Sukuna head on with it. He would transform his soul, entering his instant body of distorted killing form, telling Sukuna that they could finally resume their battle. There would be no more running anymore. Sukuna would praise Mahito for finding his true self in the middle of battle. However, all of it was pointless. It didn't matter how much stronger he'd gotten. He still wasn't stronger than him. Sukuna would tell Mahito that he wasn't even as strong as Yuji was. He would tell Mahito that if Yuji was fighting him one-on-one right now, he would be absolutely obliterated. Mahito would grin nervously, realizing that the gap between him and Sukuna may be bigger than he anticipated. Sukuna would make the initiative first, rushing in at Mahito. As Mahito would attempt to swing, Sukuna would duck underneath it, sending a dismantle straight towards Mahito's arm. Mahito's arm would go flying, but he would simply regrow it, attempting to strike Sukuna again. However, Sukuna would tell Mahito that he wanted to try something that the boy hasn't tried yet. His body was changing in a way that was weird. Sukuna would then begin to transform Yuji's body. Yuji would grow an extra pair of arms, along with blood armor, exactly like the cursed spirits he had fought before. Sukuna would then also grow a mouth on his stomach. He would exclaim how amazing this was. It was almost as if he was in his original body. He would tell Mahito that Yuji's body was more curse-like now that he's consumed more special grade objects. And Sukuna is excited to see where Yuji would go from this. He would then get into another fighting stance, telling Mahito to continue coming forward. They still have a lot more time. He doesn't feel Yuji fighting back even a little bit. Mahito would begin to understand the exact difference in strength between him and Sukuna, but Mahito would still continue to rush in, attempting to get that one attack on Sukuna. He would rush in, throwing a right. However, Sukuna would send a dismantle towards his arm, cutting it off. Sukuna would then grab Mahito by the neck with his top two arms. He would pull Mahito up into the air, using his bottom two hands to grab Mahito's torso. He would then use cleave on Mahito, digging into his skin. The attack would shred Mahito's bottom half completely off. Sukuna would then toss Mahito into the air, jumping up with him, kneeing him directly in the stomach. This would send Mahito flying through the air, As Sukuna would jump up, following up on his attack, he would use both pairs of arms to slam Mahito back down into the ground. As Mahito would crash through buildings, landing back on the ground, he would look up, seeing Sukuna diving back down with both pairs of arms. Sukuna would land on top of Mahito, crushing him, slamming him into the ground. At the same time, Sukuna would use cleave, cutting into Mahito's skin over and over. Mahito would begin to panic. The damage he was receiving to his soul right now wasn't good at all. Mahito was right on death's door, but he wouldn't accept this. Not even a little bit. As the cleaving would then stop, Mahito would deactivate his instant body of distorted killing. He would then begin to use hand signs. Sukuna, seeing this, would laugh, telling Mahito that he's extremely brave for trying this. As Sukuna would then begin to make hand signs as well. They would both yell domain expansion, starting out with the domain battle. However, since Sukuna had the more refined domain, and it was an open domain, Mahito's domain would instantly collapse, with Sukuna's domain taking over. Everything within a 200-meter radius within Sukuna's shrine would have been completely obliterated. Sukuna would watch on, laughing, as he watched as Mahito would be cut into ribbons, until there was absolutely nothing left of him. Sukuna would deactivate his domain, and look upon the carnage he had just inflicted on Shibuya. He would smile and say that he couldn't wait until he got all 20 of his fingers. As Sukuna would be walking away from the rubble, he would see a Jujutsu sorcerer. It would be Mei Mei. He would be crawling away as one of his legs had gotten caught in the shrine. He would laugh and tell the boy that he was lucky to survive. Mei Mei would turn around and see that Yuji was there, but he could realize that it wasn't Yuji and it was in fact Sukuna. As Mei Mei would be thinking that he was about to lose his life here, he would prepare to summon Maharaga. Sukuna, seeing this, would begin to get excited. He didn't realize that Mei Mei had this much potential, but he could only get more and more excited. And I think that's where I'm going to end it. I want to thank you all for listening for this long, and I also want to thank everybody for 1.6k subs. I don't know what I'm going to do for a 1k sub special, I'm going to be honest. I would love ideas, but yeah, I'm not sure right now. But for right now, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for supporting me for this long. But yeah, thank you. Peace.